everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. This week, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to Kirsty and Jay from I'll Listen. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey Evie, we're great, thanks. How are you?
Oh yeah, excited, really excited.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm good, thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for inviting us, honestly, it's a pleasure.
Well, what have you guys been up to today?
Oh God, all ladies first.
I've been busy in the office prepping resources and things for this week because I'm back out in the primary schools delivering our sessions on mental health. So I've had a hectic day getting things ready, all prepared. Jay's had a much more relaxing day than me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been with my kids all day, so I've been to Tesco, we have baked some cakes, we've made some meatballs, and I think that's about it. So yeah, my day's been much more fun. Yeah,
How old are your kids?
So my oldest is 2.5,
Aww.
and my youngest was born a few weeks ago on the 11th of December. So she is like 3-4 weeks, 3 weeks basically, yeah, almost a month. So very tired.
Yes, I can imagine. Well, she was born quite close to Christmas then, wasn't she?
Well, yeah, she was actually due on the 28th of December, so thankfully she went early.
Yes.
Very early.
Yeah, very early actually, that's the point, yeah.
Not much sleep going on in our house at the minute.
Yes, I can imagine, yeah. So, to begin with, can you guys tell me a bit about I'll Listen?
Ladies first.
So I'll Listen, we are a local charity and our main aim is we're early intervention around mental health. So we focus predominantly on supporting young children and young adults with their mental health. So that can range from our primary school educational programme, which we go in around the Key Stage 2 area and start getting them to talk about mental health. And then that leads on to our listening service in high schools. And then again onto our therapeutic services for that more one-to-one support. We're quite a big organisation now. I think there's about 38 of us now within the organisation. Yeah. And we've got several different teams. So we've got the schools team, which Jay and I are part of, which form the primary and secondary part of the team, I guess. And then we've got a fundraising team. So they're the ones that go out, create all those lovely events like Tough Mucker and things like that people might have seen in the press. And then we've also got a marketing team, so they're getting out there on the socials and making I Listen a common name that everybody can relate to and understand about. And then we've obviously got our other sort of financial teams, and then we go on to our therapeutic team based up in hospice, who obviously support those that need that little bit extra from our listening service and our one-to-one therapeutic service there. So that's kind of what we do really, isn't it?
Yeah, so early intervention, mental health, basically just supporting people. We also, obviously with our wellbeing solutions team, support, like basically deliver courses to businesses, companies, individuals, and that can range from basically how to look after your mental health in the workplace. We also look at menopause as well, which people are surprised by, obviously with it being a sort of mental health condition really, but struggle for some people. And yeah, we have a great team. We also have sort of a collective drive really to support people, whether that be young people, adults, whatever. So yeah, we've got a pretty fantastic bunch of people that we work with, don't we?
Yeah, and I think I've recently joined I'll Listen back in June last year, and I think for me it's meeting the team was a massive thing for me, because we all want to work there. We all want to make a difference. We're not there to pay our bills. You know, we're there because we are passionate about mental health, and we're passionate about getting that stigma changed and making a difference for young people. So for me, I think it's so nice working with such like-minded people.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. I think having a nice team of people to work with really helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
When do you think I Listen was kind of like set up?
It was originally set up 50 years ago.
Yes.
As so it was originally Manx Cancer Help. Is that correct? That's right, yeah.
That's right, yep.
Yeah, Manx Cancer Help, which was supporting people who basically had cancer, or family members had cancer, on the more psychological sort of side of things. So obviously we have people supporting people with the actual conditions, the cancer treatments and stuff like that, whereas Manx Cancer Help was supporting people who were struggling with their mental health around, you know, sort of cancer diagnoses, or maybe even just the idea of coming to death and stuff like that. So then that was originally, you know, its own service, and then back in it was 2019. I don't know the specific dates, but then we basically it became an extension to I Listen and Minds Matter, which is obviously what it is most well known for now. So yeah, it's the 50-year party.
50-year party.
50-year party this year to celebrate 50
wow.
years of supporting people's mental well-being and mental health, really, which is kind of incredible, really.
It's
50
pretty
years.
is,
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know the exact dates, but obviously it's 50 years ago from now. My math isn't great.
No, fair. Mine's not that great either, but yeah.
So 50 years ago, and then obviously I Listen is sort of new and growing rapidly.
Growing rapidly,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got new members of the staff over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Even we've had
Oh wow.
new staff in our marketing kind of department, the fundraising team, and then just at the end of last summer we had another person join the schools team. So we are growing, because the demand and, you know, the things that we're trying to provide are pushing out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. So mental health has previously been a bit of a taboo topic. Do you think that progress is being made in this area?
Well, I mean, I personally feel that it's made progress, for sure. From my experience, so when I was in school, I struggled really bad with anxiety, and that's like 10, 12 years ago maybe, and it was not a thing. You know, it was like, we didn't talk about it, no one talked about it, and if you had it, you were like, well, God, an outsider, really. Whereas now we're talking about it a lot more. Young people are talking about it, as it's more common, specifically anxiety. We're talking about disorders a little bit more commonly, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, all the neurodiverse sort of conditions that kind of occur. So I think it's definitely making improvements, but there's obviously always
more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree with Jay on that point. I think the progress is being made. You know, we're out in all but 2 primary schools now, delivering the same curriculum across the Key Stage 2 and some assembly work with Key Stage 1, and we're trying to get that message out that mental health is okay, and it is okay to not be okay, and really get them to understand what mental health is. Very similar to Jay, my experience as a child, you know, unfortunately I was anorexic as a child, and I didn't know that even connected with mental health. And there wasn't that support out there. And, you know, my parents struggled in that way as well, trying to find the right support for me. And there wasn't a listening service at school. There wasn't a teacher to talk to. And there wasn't that kind of open conversation or dialogue about mental health affecting us. So I think for me, yes, it was a good few years ago since I went to school. But now that opportunity to be able to talk to someone within a school environment or a teacher, or to come into our Listen and self-refer, it's got so much better. That there is now a place to go, and that is what we want to achieve as our Listen. We want someone to know that it's okay to ask for help, to, you know, talk to the teachers, talk to parents, and just get that support that they need, because mental health affects every single one of us. And that's something that I do when I go into primary school. I get them to understand what mental health is, which we do a little visual around it, where we touch our heads for think, we touch our hearts for feel, and then we put our hands out for acting, and we do that sort of visual that mental health is how we think, it's how we feel, and it's how we act. And then we sort of start talking about the reasons why it's so important and why we need to be listening to each other and supporting each other. So for me, I think it's getting out there. But I think we've still got a lot more to do.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there's always areas for improvement on any sort of level. But yeah, it's getting there. I think people are talking about it more. So
Absolutely.
From our personal experiences, it definitely is. I mean, obviously you're currently in school. how do you feel like there's still quite a stigma around speaking about your mental health, or just other people's mental health, or mental health in general?
I mean, from what I know, it has got better from what it was like previously, but I think there is still a bit of a stigma about it. I mean, like, people do talk about it, but not as much as we probably should. It is kind of a topic that's sometimes avoided.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think it's avoided for any particular reason? I mean, my particular fear would be that people don't want to upset anyone. No one wants to upset anyone. People don't want to ask questions about their experience because they fear that they're going to sort of make someone feel uncomfortable or upset or whatever it might be. Do you think there's any other reasons as to maybe why that stigma's still there?
I think that's the main one, but also possibly because people who have maybe not struggled with their mental health in the past aren't sure how to approach the topic and aren't sure how to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think absolutely. I think obviously with your with your condition you can't see. Mm-hmm. There's probably questions that I maybe wouldn't ask because didn't want to upset you or whatever, but you kind of give me the vibe that you would sort of accept maybe questions and open book.
Yeah.
Whereas I know some people maybe aren't that way inclined. So that's where sometimes the stigma lies. Is a particular area of people maybe don't want to talk about it. If that's religious purposes, cultural, there's so many factors. And also maybe people have been brought up that way. Into sort of a more old-fashioned household where it was never spoke about, so it continues not to be spoke about. So yeah, but that could be a podcast for we could speak about that for about 10 years.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't want to take up too much time on that.
I think that's why we're working hard in primary schools, so that we're getting that message at a young age. Mm-hmm. So I know now over the last year, sort of year sixes from last year that have now gone into high school, you ask them what is mental health and they say it's how I think, it's how I feel, it's how I act. So we know that message is getting out there, but we're hoping that's just going to come through more and more the more work we're doing. We're in most primary schools now. We're in every year, delivering different activities. They're not all the same. They're interactive, they're fun. We're getting them to really think about their mental health. So hopefully that's going to dilute, right through into secondary as they move forward, which I think is really, really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So do you think there are any big stigmas or stereotypes surrounding mental health?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is that if someone is struggling with their mental health, so people will say, I've got mental health, I've got mental health problems, that they automatically assume that they're unwell, and that actually they need to be locked up, or they're crazy, or they're whatever it might be. So to kind of describe what mental health is, really similar to physical health, it's obviously the sort of condition that your sort of mental state is in. So a little bit like if someone says, I broke my leg, your physical health at that point is broken leg, Mm-hmm. Whereas with mental health, people sort of attach having mental health as having a mental health disorder or issue, whatever it might be. Whereas we know we get stressed out, we know we get anxious, we know we get worried about certain things. And I think sometimes people don't want to use that specific wording, mental health, because we don't actually know too much. Yeah. People don't know enough about it. People fear that you sound like you've got some sort of condition, whereas actually it's not the case. So I think that's one of the biggest stigmas, is that when I speak to some young people on a one-to-one basis, they will say, I've got mental health, when what they actually mean is that they're struggling with their mental health. So that's one of the biggest stigmas, is that if someone says that, I'm trying to think even how to word this. I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent.
No, it's fine.
But basically, I do think that as soon as that word is very much mentioned, it's like panic mode. It's almost like your anxiety is heightened as soon as that word gets mentioned. So one of the big stigmas is that as soon as that word gets mentioned, it's a bad thing. Whereas actually, my mental health at the minute, currently in this position, we're sat here, is pretty good. In good company. My mental health is at a positive state. It can be good and it can be bad. So that's one of the big stigmas.
And I think we don't see it as much in primary, the stigmas around mental health, because they're interested in learning about mental health. They want to understand it. And the activities that we do, again, are really fun and interactive. So the stigmas, I think, aren't so much within primary, because they're just starting to learn about it and understand it. But I know as we go into secondary, we face lots of different topics, body image, social media, anxiety, stress, exam stress, friendships, relationships. So there's lots and lots of things that tend to come up a lot more that I don't think people realise affects their mental health. So we've got Jess, who's just joined us in the last school year, and she's out there now in secondary, and she's working with the schools to look at what is this, you know, the topic that is becoming an issue. So is it social media? Do we need to do social media anxiety? Do we need to do a body image session? You know, and we're trying to work with the schools around the, you know, the things that are actually happening there and now, rather than just sort of a flat platform of this is mental health, you know, in the different topics. We're really trying to focus in on some of the key issues that we tend to come from the one-to-one sessions. You know, what are we seeing? What are the trends? We're trying to work with the schools to, I guess, empower individuals to think about, you know, their mental health and the reasons why they're struggling, and not necessarily have that stigma around it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the big stigmas as well is that, like, happy people can't be sad, you know, and happy people can't be struggling, or people that are high achievers can't be struggling, you know, like, I think there's like a big stigma around what people see, you know, what people see. Limit is like basically that you couldn't be like that. How could someone that's so high achieving, you know, be struggling or doing this or have this, you know, people that have got loads of money, you know, sort of, are they happy, are they not? You know, it's like a stigma linked to what people have or what people see from the outside, actually. You can't see you can't see anyone's mental health, can you?
No.
You know, and you can't feel what they feel, and everyone's individual. To sort of put an assumption on someone can be a big stigma. You know, that someone that plays for the football team or someone that's a great musician or whatever, saying that they can't struggle. I think that's another big stigma.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the problems with social media, in a way that people only share on social media the highlights of their life.
Absolutely.
And because people only share the highlights, it can make other people feel like it can make other people kind of feel worthless because they don't have what these other people have, when actually everyone struggles. It's just that these people only share their like highest points.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jess is doing a session over the next few weeks around sort of social media versus reality. So understanding that actually people are only posting what you want to see, and the reality is very, very different. And it's just getting people to remember that, you know, when they're seeing that, you know, fancy pair of trainers that someone's got for Christmas that they're wearing on their social media, that yes, that might be what they've got, but that might have been something particularly special, and that's not how their life is. They don't get things all the time, and it's just really trying to understand that social media, you know, we as in primary we talk about how good social media is, but then we also talk about the dangers of social media. So it's again just getting people to understand what is reality and what is, you know, what we're wanting people to see.
Yeah,
you know, everybody wants to show their best, don't they? But we need to remember that we're not all at our best all the time.
No, absolutely.
You know, there's moments where, you know, I'm wearing my PJs and my hair screwed back, you know, but I'm not posting that on my social media. You know, I'm posting it when, you know, I'm doing something really great. So I guess it's just reminding people that it is okay to not be okay.
Yeah, and like that's a really important message, a kind of like really good observation that, Evie, of the importance of social media, and like kind of remembering that, you know, it isn't real for the most part, you know. So yeah, that if that's one message that could go out to anyone, is that, you know, to get a better relationship with social media, you know.
Yeah,
I would definitely say, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, mental health is a very personal subject, and people can often struggle to open up about it. How do you encourage people to do this?
Well, I mean, obviously the ideal is that someone comes to speak to, you know, myself if someone is struggling, you know, someone that in the listening service, which obviously we operate in all of the high schools. You know, the ideal is that they come and just speak to someone, but that never is as easy as it sort of seems. It's starting with a conversation with someone that they trust, you know, and that could be a teacher, that could be a parent, a carer, it could be a friend, it could be, you know, someone on a free platform where they offer, you know, sort of anonymous counselling services. Yeah. In order to encourage someone to do that is to kind of look at the benefits, really. So if we imagine that a young person is struggling with anxiety, you know, what's that affecting? Is that affecting their school, their relationships? Is it affecting, you know, and to see that, you know, these things can actually be resolved by talking about it, by acting on it, by doing whatever. So obviously the ideal is to encourage anyone and everyone to speak to a professional if they're really struggling, but at the same time, it's just encouraging people to talk to the people that care about them most.
But for me, so going into primary schools, I know the secondary school experience is very different, but when we're going in, we're doing activities, you know, they get to know me, they know me as Kirsty. You know, I'm in there all the time. We go in for 8 sessions over the course of the year. Some are, you know, consistent, some are spread out throughout the year, so they get to know me. And then you might be doing a journaling activity with them, or doing a game with some of them, and they will just go, oh, Kirsty, do you know I've got this issue, or who would I speak to about this, or they'll open up in that sense. And we offer summer sessions as well, where children can come and do activities with us. Like last year we did positivity jars, where we made sand jars and, you know, talked about positivity. And, you know, the children will then, you know, open up to you and say, oh, well, you know, I remember when I wasn't very positive and this happened in my life. And, you know, we can kind of link into children when they're doing something. They often are more willing to open up when their mind is busy, you know, when they're feeling comfortable, they've earned your trust. So by doing the activities that we do across the schools, they build that relationship with us. So if they do need help, they know they can just go, oh, I'll ask Kirsty from Alison next time she's in, or I'll ask Jay next time I see him in the corridor. And that's what we want. We want people and children to know that we're there for them. So, you know, we've always got time. We're always there to listen. So I think for me, just encourage them in that sense is really important.
Yeah, yeah, and I think as well, one of the big things that a lot of people worry about when they're coming into sort of one-to-one sessions, or they're speaking to anyone, is that someone else is going to find out about that information. Some of you might say that, you know, I've got problems at school, I've got problems at home, or whatever it might be. So we work on a confidential basis. So we have a confidentiality policy on one-to-one support, whereby it's essentially a respect rule. You know, whatever we discuss in these 4 walls will stay within these 4 walls. There are only a few circumstances basically where that would have to be broken. But for the most part, so that would give them sort of reassurance that what they talk about won't go back to mum and dad and all that sort of stuff, unless we felt that there was some sort of risk there. So that would be like if they were at harm basically to themselves, to other people, from someone else. So that's how we would encourage someone to come out and speak, because they might fear that all their friends will find out, or all the teachers will find out, which, you know, generally isn't the case. If you've been struggling with some friendship issues, or you've been dealing with some issues at home, or whatever it might be, those can be, you know, sort of kept on a confidential basis, really. That's another way to encourage people, is that, you know, obviously if you speak to your friends, there's a potential that information could get out. But if you speak to a professional, you know, we're bound by, you know, particular rules, and our confidentiality rule basically says, you know, what we discuss in these 4 walls kind of stays in these 4 walls, other than the other circumstances, of course. So that's another way to encourage people to sort of talk without fear, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of complexities to mental health. I mean, it's never just like one thought, it's processing lots of different feelings. Do you think this makes it difficult for people to sort of put a name to those thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is hard to kind of pinpoint one feeling, because we talk about emotions and feelings quite a lot, especially when we're working with young people. You know, happy, sad, you know, confused. You know, even in schools we've started with hangry now, because it is actually an emotion that people are starting to feel. And I don't think anybody feels one set of emotions. So it's about trying to understand that it is okay to feel several different things. You might feel happy about one part of your life, but you might feel really frustrated, and, you know, you might be having a great time at home, things are going well, but school you're really struggling, and that's affecting your mental health. So it's getting people to understand that emotions are something that we all experience very, very differently. We kind of describe it as a bit of an emotional roller coaster. You know, a roller coaster just doesn't go flat. It goes up, down, in and out, you know, and spins around. And that's exactly what happens to our emotions and our feelings throughout the course of a day. You know, we might start a day feeling really good, but, you know, different factors will make us feel very different. So it is a complex process dealing with those emotions and feelings, but it's just getting young people to understand that it's okay to feel all the different emotions. It's okay to feel some of the fears and anxieties around some of those emotions. So for us, it's just getting them to talk about them, and not necessarily put a name to them, but just try and understand the sort of core reasons why they're feeling that way.
Yeah. And sometimes you can have 2 emotions at the same time. You know, you can have the sort of happiness of a situation, but also worry about it as well, you know. And for the most part, having the sort of the understanding of what it might be, can be helpful. But more often than not, we're trying to look at, you know, are those things affecting your life on a sort of bigger scale? and I'm not saying a bigger scale, like it has to be catastrophizing or catastrophe type situation. It just has to be something where it might be that, you know, you don't want to go into school, or you don't want to see your friends, or you don't want to, all those sort of things. So whereas sometimes we feel sad, you know, I think everyone goes through feelings of sadness and feelings of, you know, worry and all that sort of stuff, but that can happen, you know, before a test. Anxiety can kick in before a test. That's cool. Everyone sort of, that's our body set telling us, right, okay, we need to prepare for this. You know, our mind, telling us that we need to prepare for this. So, you know, let's prep, let's get a sort of little bit of worry so we can study, and, you know, but if that anxiety sort of occurs and keeps going and going and going and going, and where it doesn't, you know, you're worrying about every single little thing, that's where maybe you need to start looking at sort of potentially getting some help.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like you said, it's normal to feel multiple different emotions, but it's also such a strange feeling when you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think a good example of that is like nervous and excited about a situation.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's probably two of the most common things that kick in, don't they? You know, it might be, so like this podcast today, I was definitely
excited.
So buzzing.
Yeah.
But nervous.
Oh my God,
I
so
get that
nervous.
every week, don't
Yeah,
worry.
God, yeah. So you've got the perfect example there, really, is that you're probably, most people that will be coming onto this podcast, they want to do it well, they want to impress, but at the same time, it's a really cool thing to be a part of, you know, like we're blessed to have to sort of be a part of this. So that can happen, you know, sort of anger as well, and sadness, you know, that sort of kicks in together as well, you know. I'm angry about something, but actually it's upsetting me that I'm angry, and, you know. So yeah, so it's kind of, sometimes I think knowing what the emotion is can be helpful, but sometimes it's about the feeling and the action and basically how you might behave. That's sometimes the most important thing, you know, the not linking it together too much, or thinking about the emotion too deeply on some level.
Yeah.
Because it can get complicated.
Definitely,
For
yeah.
sure.
It absolutely can, yeah. So do you think that it's important to teach society the right language to use regarding mental health when interacting with someone who might be struggling with it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a real key, mainly to get everybody to understand the language around mental health. So, you know, we start with looking at sort of emotional literacy. So that's understanding what feelings and emotions are, who experiences them. Then we sort of look at self-esteem, you know, what is it that affects us and the way we think and the way we feel. And then we sort of think about positive relationships as well, which is around like, you know, teachers, parents, carers, all those relationships. And then we look at like coping skills as well. So we're trying to teach young people to know that it is okay to not be okay, and that mental health is about how you think, but it is also about how you feel, but predominantly it's about how you act on those feelings. And what we want children to understand is that it's absolutely okay to feel sad and angry and, you know, extremely happy and all these different types of things, but it's about how we behave when we feel this way, and that's what we want to change. So for some of our sessions, we do sort of mental health myths, and we do a bit of a quiz, and we think about some of those real myths that are around mental health, and trying to change some of those stigmas around, you know, I think one of the questions I ask in my quiz is, does everybody with mental health, are they all angry? Because a lot of people think mental health, you're just angry. If you've got mental health problems, you're just an angry person. So it's getting everybody to change those thoughts around what's out there, what myths are out there around mental health. So we kind of start with that, and then, you know, we delve a bit deeper into understanding what it is and why we feel the way we do, and also how we can change the way we behave around those feelings. And I think that's what's really important, isn't it, that language is out there. But again, it's not the most important thing. It's just as long as they can understand what mental health is and how they can change the way they behave, then, you know, the language doesn't really need to be that important, I guess.
Yeah, so I think like it kind of is important. It's just that for the most part, our aim really is to get people talking about it, whether they know the language, whatever it might be. The first step is having the conversation, talking about it. Whether it's you don't know how you feel, if it's just explaining how you feel with non-mental health words, the wrong words, you know, whatever it might be.
Visual aids, anything.
Visual aids, exactly. You know, like stuff like that can be obviously, you know, super helpful. But I think, you know, for the most part, we're just trying to encourage people to come in, and then we can start educating them on the words. But the beauty of Kirsty's role is that that's what she's doing. You know, like from the obviously we want everyone to know, but if we can get children, you know, at the minute, Evie, your brain's probably like a sponge, you know. Whereas mine's more like a used up sponge that doesn't work anymore. So for the most part, they're the perfect people to start with, aren't they, really? Because they're going to be our next generation of people talking about it, understanding the words. Okay, well, this is what mental health means. One of the biggest things that you see on mental health courses are, the first question is like, who has mental health? And obviously, for the most part, people who've never been on a course like that will probably think, oh, I don't know, is it 50%? Is it 20%? But everyone has mental health. But the wording of that, the language, people assume, and as I said earlier, that is a mental health condition. You have a disorder, you have an illness, you have whatever, but actually mental health is just obviously the health
just
of
something that we all have. It's
Exactly.
It's the health of our brains and our minds. So it's educating them that actually we all have it, but it's very different, and everybody's different at different times. You know, some of us might suffer as a young age, some of us might suffer as we get older. It all depends on, you know, environmental factors, things that are going on in our lives. So yeah, I think what we're trying to do is to educate, you know, from a young age, so that as you say, when that next generation are talking about mental health, you know, it's out there and it becomes okay and it becomes the norm. Is what we're really trying to achieve.
And I've got a question for you, Evie. So, so how confident do you feel in sort of like your mental health? I'm going to call it thesaurus.
Okay. I would say quite confident. I mean, I've really struggled with my mental health in the past, and I think I still do. I think from quite a young age I've really struggled with anxiety, probably mainly because I can't see, I'm always on edge. It always feels like, because you have to be so alert of what's going on around you.
For sure.
You have to be so focused, and so I never really feel relaxed, and I've always sort of struggled with anxiety. And I think one of the trickiest parts of that was like putting a name to it. I didn't want to accept that I was struggling with anxiety. And that was one of the hardest things. But then once I was able to put a name to it, I was able to figure out those feelings and, you know what helps me. And I think that figuring that out enabled me to talk to other people who might be struggling in a way that, you know, that I was maybe using some of the correct terminology. I think one of the important things that I've always found is that it's really important to validate someone's feelings.
Absolutely.
Don't just say, oh, don't worry, because that's not going to get you anywhere.
No.
That, oh, don't worry, but I am.
Well, if you didn't worry, you wouldn't be in this situation.
Exactly. Like, I'm worrying. You can't just say that. It's not going to get you anywhere. So validating someone's feelings, letting them know that it's okay, but also accepting that it's going to be a personal journey and it's not going to be easily fixed. It's going to be a journey and it's going to take time, but that's okay. I think that's something that's really helped me, and it's what I try to do if other people ever talk to me.
Well, it sounds like I'll be out of a job in a
I
year's
know,
time.
I was thinking that.
But that is, I mean, that alone is like such a credit to you, because I seen a thing a while ago and it was like, be the person now that you needed when you were a kid, basically. So I am lucky with my family. I've got a really supportive family, but I never felt comfortable talking about my anxiety, you know, because of the language and all that sort of stuff. But you're basically that person that I wish I was when I was like 14, 15. So that's a huge credit to you. I think it's amazing, and you should be so proud of actually taking control of that situation.
Massively.
You know, under your circumstances, as we said to Steve before, superpowers. You basically got a superpower here, and you're very much using it. As we said with the Spidey senses, that's basically what it is.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, you should be so proud.
Thank you. So, do you guys think that your services reach the disabled community?
Well, I mean, from my experience, we work with a lot of sort of neurodiverse people. Currently I have a student who has Asperger's, and I've had students with autism, with ADHD. I would say with the neurological side of things, I would say that we, you know, we do support, but I've never worked with anyone with a sort of physical disability. Maybe one or two, but that wasn't their sort of necessarily their issue. But it would depend. I suppose if we got more referrals in, would we? I'm not entirely sure. That's a sort of a question for the boss, I suppose. But I think we would try to reach on from my role in the listening service, supporting young people with disabilities. I don't see that we wouldn't. If someone came in that was obviously if you made a referral in, and obviously your criteria was you sort of require sort of hit the support levels that we could offer, then I don't see why your condition or your disability would hinder you from coming in for the support.
Yeah.
I just don't know if maybe they required sort of a carer or they needed high level needs support. I don't know. But for the most part, I think that we would support, the disability community.
Yeah. I mean, I know from my sort of own experiences that I think because I have a disability, my mental health can be quite bespoke.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's difficult to find professionals who have sort of like a level of understanding and experience outside, I guess, like the mainstream arena, really. So do you guys think that more could be done to support the disabled community in this area?
I think there's always something we can do more,
Yeah.
and I think most people would say that there's always areas to progress in. There's always things that we can do, but we're a charity, so we are based on what funds we raise and what contracts that we can obtain and the fundraising and things. So in order for us to develop our services even further, which is obviously what we want to do, we want to get out into as many places and and educate and be that early intervention across the island. But in order to do that, we do need that that secure funding to enable us to maybe reach out a bit further into the disabled community. We work with lots of children who are neurodiverse, lots of children with autism in primary schools, lots of children that are perhaps not within the mainstream arena but not quite in the the specialized units. So we work quite a lot with those type of young people as well, and we adapt a lot of our things that we do. We adapt our resources, we adapt the way that we deliver our programs. We've got Jess who's coming into the high schools and doing the tutor groups, which I think, Evie, you might have met Jess.
Yes, I think I met Jess,
So again, we're changing the way that we deliver the things that we do depending on our audience, and that's from, reception in Key Stage 1 assemblies. They're very different to what we do in Key Stage 2, and, we're constantly adapting. There's some lessons I go into where there's some highly autistic children, and I just adapt the things that I'm doing, and that's, I guess that's the first step into working that little bit more collaborative and equality as well, making sure that everybody's getting that same experience and just having to adapt it a little bit. But absolutely, from your question, I think there's always something that we could be doing more of.
For sure,
and,
sure.
That's why we've got this fantastic fundraising team that are out there and trying to secure the funds for us so that we can develop and offer more in our services, because I think we're such an amazing service that is growing so rapidly that with that funding we can do so much more.
Yeah, and I think as well, I can't speak for the classroom-based stuff because obviously that can add sort of complexities to how you support a group of people, and whether that's you're a teacher or you're sort of in Kirsty's role as a facilitator. But as a one-to-one sort of support, the most important thing to me is that your disability would not hinder your sort of experience with me. I do like to dance in my sessions, so I feel like if you couldn't see that, you would probably think, what is that noise going on? Why is he being so fidgety, right? But I think for the most part is that I would try and understand your experience as it was, and look at, one of the big things we look at is a circle of control. What can you control? So obviously with your condition, that I believe eyesight is something that you obviously can't change.
Yeah.
But we'd look at other things. I'd understand, okay, how does that look for you? How does that feel for you? How does this sort of like experience go for you? So for the most part, on a one-to-one basis, you can get a bit more of an understanding of how it is bespoke to one person. So I've worked so far for Prior Listen probably with like 5, 6, maybe 7 young people, all boys actually, with Asperger's syndrome, and every single one has a different experience. But what the beauty of it is in my role is that I can just get a really true understanding of what's that like every day, what your experience like, social situations, blah blah, that and the other, to get a richer understanding of what that might be like. So as a personal sort of practitioner, I think I can probably speak for most of the sort of wellbeing practitioners who do the one-to-one support, they would change it to each individual person, and their needs, and also to kind of understand and experience. They talk about it like frame of reference is, you know, how a person feels and sees a situation, or whatever senses, you know, like you talked very much about your touch and your hearing being fantastic, right? So we'd maybe even look into that, you know, what does it sound like when you go into this situation? So we'll talk about it right now if you're okay to, Evie.
Yeah.
So walking down the halls was the biggest thing that caused my anxiety. I used to think everyone's looking at me.
I get that, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to think everyone's looking at me, someone's going to do something to me. Was so just in total fear for something that wasn't really a fearful situation, right? Your situation is obviously very different, but let's put that into perspective. What is it like for you? How do you experience that situation going down the corridors? What's that like for you?
Going down the corridors is an interesting one because obviously high school, you get break, you get lunch, but you don't get the same amount of breaks as you do in primary school. So most people, a lot of people find that walking between lessons where they can catch up with their friends is a break for them.
Right.
It's a bit of a, you know, a bit of a time to breathe. Walking down the corridors for me is just as stressful, and I need to concentrate just as much as I do in lessons. Because I'm walking down the corridors and I've got my cane in one hand and I'm tapping it against a wall. But you're trying to dodge people. You're trying to make sure you don't trip anyone up because that's embarrassing. You're trying to, you know, make sure you don't walk into anyone. You're focusing on where you're going. You're focusing on what the cane's feeling. And all you can hear is people. You can just hear this like huge crowd of people around you. And it can be daunting. And especially as a year 7, I hated lesson changeovers.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
like,
sure, yeah.
I don't want to do this. Do I have to do this again? Okay, yes, I do. And you get used to it. I'm in year 10 now, so I'm like, it's lesson changeover.
Yeah.
But it's stressful.
Yeah, well, you're having like sensory overload times 10, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, and for the most part, you know, we are kind of blessed with, you know, with our eyesight, and you know that makes that situation a lot easier for us. So understandably, that would be totally kind of chaotic and a bit and a bit scary, really, especially when you know that you're kind of having to look out for so many different things, whereas anyone else would just kind of just be like, I'm just going to my next lesson. So do you think that there's anything that could happen for, you know, obviously you're into year 10 now, I'm not sure if you're going to go on to sixth form, but do you think there's anything that schools could do, or anyone could do, or students, or anyone around you that could do, that could make that process easier for you, but also someone else that might go through that as well?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I would say is that I can't see people coming, but people can see me.
Right, okay,
and if they can't see me, they can see the cane. So it's really important that people keep an eye out if they see me walking down the corridors, just so that we don't walk into each other.
Yeah.
It's just really important that people are looking where they're going and making sure they're keeping an eye out for me, because they can see me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of like, that concept really could align to every single little thing going on in the world.
It's an awareness, isn't it?
Oh, an awareness, yeah, absolutely. An awareness of each other. Like, no one needs to know. So you have bilateral...
Bilateral anophthalmia.
Right, okay, yeah. I'm glad I didn't say that, because I would have definitely... So you have that condition, right? So no one needs to really know the ins and outs of that situation, do they?
No.
Obviously, you know, if someone does, that's amazing, that's great.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's not about what it is. It's more about how people can support around you. Would that be fair? Do you think?
That is definitely fair, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like with my anxiety. No one really needed to understand it. People just needed to kind of, maybe on some level, accept that I might have been a little bit nervous in situations, or I might have also just been a little bit shy or quiet in certain situations, and that's just how I was.
Yeah.
But people didn't need to know I had an anxiety disorder, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the reason I wanted to kind of understand that.
Yeah.
So thank you for telling me that.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
That's fine. So what would you say are some of the common coping mechanisms that people find helpful in managing their mental health?
Right, okay, so I thought I'd make a shout out to, so the Anna Freud website offers a list, and I can send this over to, so you can put this in the bio of this podcast, but it's basically just a list of coping skills. Now, I suppose anything could really be described as a coping skill. as whether it be negative or positive is a total different story. So coping strategy really would be something on the lines that helps support you. And I'm sorry, this isn't answering your question. This is just me being this is me being a coping skills nerd. But basically, it's like the sort of something that you're doing to help you cope with a particularly stressful, negative, possibly maybe even happy situation, whatever it might be, but that's causing you a little bit of worry. The main ones, things like exercise. Well, exercise is obviously a big one. Some people use like video gaming as a way of coping, talking, playing like with friends, whatever that might be. We're seeing a lot more of people using like cold water therapy, which is really helpful. I mean, it's like in terms of like it producing, like reducing stress levels can be helpful, improving sleep, all that sort of stuff. Knitting is a really good one. We've got one of our therapists, Erica, is like really into knitting. So it's amazing. So she might even do that to help manage her stress. The kind of list is endless, I suppose.
It is absolutely endless. And I think what we try and get people to do when we're talking about coping skills, especially as, you know, we start talking about it in primary as they go into secondary, is finding something that they love. So for me, I love running. I love getting out for a run and just switching off, listening to my music, and it just resets my brain. Whereas my colleague Holly, who I work with, you know, her favourite thing is to kind of, you know, snuggle up in bed with a nice movie, and that kind of really chills her out. But for me, that would be my worst nightmare. So it's about getting children to understand that actually going and playing a game of football, that's their area, or dancing, or playing Fortnite and, you know, thrashing things out with their friends, or even reading a book, meditating, swimming. It's just getting them to know that whatever they love to do is where they should focus that energy, you know? And it comes from a lot of things. Like I have a young boy, my son, and he is ADHD, and you know, he's very hyperactive, and he's, you know, he can't focus on a lot of things. And over this last summer, he's found fishing. And he fishes for hours, and I mean 10 hours until the dark. You know, he's there, he's fishing, he's having a great time, and he's just found something for him that's helping him cope with all the struggles that he has and all the emotions that he feels. He's able to do that through a particular thing. So for us, it's about educating people to find that thing that, you know, because exercise doesn't work for everyone, reading doesn't work for everyone. It's about finding that thing that we really enjoy and just putting more focus into it, really.
Because I think as well, sorry Evie, I think one of the sort of most important things about coping really is kind of a mindfulness exercise.
Absolutely,
to sort of put your mind onto something that is maybe more positive, or that's something that's going to distract you, or something that's going to sort of, I don't know, re-energize yourself on some level. That's why you know, obviously people talk about exercise, and people kind of fear the word mindfulness. They think you're going to sit down and, you know, and they're going to go, and you're going to do like meditation sort of exercises, which isn't the case. Mindfulness is essentially just taking your mind and putting it onto something more positive, like doing a puzzle, jigsaw, or whatever it might be. You know, I taught myself to juggle in lockdown because it was a mindfulness exercise. It was cool as anything, but that was like really good because I felt myself stressing out about my partner and everything else, and I juggle. And like it was really, really kind of helpful. And I did puzzles. I basically turned into like a 70-year-old clown. That's pretty much what happened. So on coping skills then, what have you found that have kind of been the most helpful for you, Evie?
I think listening to music really helps. One of my favourite things is reading. Well, listening to audiobooks, but I would still count that as reading.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
I do that too.
Big time. That is more reading than reading.
That's more reading than reading
that's
for us.
what I was thinking. So listening to audiobooks, because you can get Braille books, but Braille's bigger than print, so Harry Potter in Braille is like trolley. You don't want to do it.
It'll take a long time.
Yeah.
There's like 4 bricks.
Yeah, exactly. But Harry Potter's one of my favourite books, so I listen to it on audio.
Amazing.
But music, audiobooks. I've got a dog and a cat, so I love just like spending time with them, because animals, you can just vent to them, and they literally cannot tell anyone.
No.
But I feel like they do listen.
Yeah,
they
I
absolutely
agree
do.
with that.
They're like the most non-judgmental
therapists
ever.
ever.
Oh god, they don't take notes. They don't do anything other than just be amazing.
Yeah, like my cat Elsie spends most of her time on my bed because I've got fluffy bed sheets. So obviously for a cat, that's like absolute
Heaven.
Yeah.
Wow.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure this cat knows my whole life story. But she just sits there and looks at me. She sits there and purrs, or she sits there and looks at me, and I can kind of tell she's looking at me. And she just like cannot judge and she doesn't judge.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's
absolutely.
And that's like another way to sort of like support your mental health on some level is like just getting the words out. Just getting the words out to something. If that's on a journal, if that's like to your cat, if that's to, you know, whatever it might be. Sometimes just getting the words out.
Absolutely.
You know, you can like get your thoughts and ruminate them and take them over and over and over, and you sort of think them, and then. But if you would have said it at the start, it might not be so bad in the long run.
Yeah, definitely.
So you don't necessarily need strategies all the time. You just need to get the words out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on the podcast. It's been so lovely to meet you.
No,
oh God,
thank you.
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. You should be so proud of this. This is just honestly, I'm looking up at the names on your list of interviewers, and oh God, yeah, we are but mere mortals compared to
not
some
at all,
of those.
no.
But I think it's a real credit to what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're breaking the stigma in so many different ways. You know, with you know, obviously with your sort of disability. I actually know someone that works at Sight Matters or had worked. Her name was Sally.
Oh yeah.
She was singing your praises, and again she was just like, that, you know, she was like, Evie is just one of those people that's just like there to sort of change something in the world, and I think that is basically what you're doing right now. So
thank you so much for having us in.
Oh God,
it's been really lovely.
Yeah, it has. Thank you so much.
And if anybody wants any more information on iListen, they can head to our website, which is www.ilisten.im, and that gives us loads more information. You can refer on that website as well, and you can also meet the team on there, so you can see mine and Jay's faces as well.
God, you don't want to do that.
Wanted to do that.
But
thank you so much, Evie.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh well, thank you guys, and thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.